It's a pleasure. I love telling them. Around 5:30ish, come down. 5:45. Okay. Out the gate at 6, and then we'll kind of stay out as long as it's comfortable and not too hot, and then come back for a breakfast. All right.
John,
Yes.
tell story.
What story? Any story?
No. Jacques and the bicycle.
Jacques and the Bicycle. Okay, this goes back quite a few years, and when I had Ulasaba Game Reserve, and it was a wintry night, and I'd taken my young family at the time out for a game drive in an open vehicle, and my tracker Jobby Corsa was sitting on the front of the bonnet on a tracker seat, and we decided to just do a general drive around, and it was getting a bit chilly, so we thought, no, we'll call it a night and drive back to the camp. And as we drove into the main camp area, we heard this lion roaring, and we thought, no, we're going to have to go and find it and see what it's all about. So we turned the car around and drove back out. And unbeknownst to us, at the same sort of time, we had an employee called Jacques and who was one of our most diligent little security guards, but he didn't live on site. He was one of the few that actually used to get a lift in every day with our staff vehicle from one of the gates. And Jock had arrived at the gate to be picked up by the staff car, but he got there too late, and the staff car had actually already left. But Jock was adamant that he was not going to miss his evening's work, and that somehow he was going to get to the lodge, which was about 8 kilometers away. So he bargained with one of the picket guards to borrow a bicycle, which was probably from the 1950s and was covered in rust and pretty much didn't work at all, and convinced the guy that he would be able to ride safely through the night in the wilds to Ulasaba. Anyway, so Jock sort of set out, and he did his first little bit of pedal, and it was really tight, and it went wheat, and then wheat, and wheat. And he kept working at it, going up the road and along the western firebreak. And on the other end of the road, we came around the corner and found this huge lion in the road in front of us and started following him. And it was like a really narrow sort of track of a road. It was actually a firebreak more than the road. And on our right-hand side was a sloot or a donga, so we couldn't kind of deviate to the right. And on the left of us was the western boundary fence. So it was a very narrow track with this line in front of the vehicle. And after about 5 minutes, we could hear this strange wheet, wheet sound coming towards us. And Jobby, the tracker, put his spotlight up and shone down the road. And in the far distance, we could see this character on this rickety old bicycle in the dark, riding towards us. And kind of at the same time as that happened, Jacques looked up and saw that there was a game drive vehicle coming towards him, but thought, not a problem, unlikely to be an animal there. And he put his head down and wheet, wheet, wheet. And another 5 minutes went by, and then he stopped his bike and he sort of climbed off and he looked down the road to see what was coming. And then suddenly realized that there was something in front of the vehicle that was walking towards him. At this point, I didn't know what to do because I couldn't get round the line. Every time we tried to drive up next to him, he got aggressive, and I had my tracker sitting on the front of the vehicle, so I thought not a good idea to push it. So we had to stay behind. So we just carried on and allowed the two to get closer and closer together. And eventually, Jock got to the point where the lion was probably 100 meters away from him, and he looked down the road. In the spotlight, he could see it was a big lion. So almost immediately, he turned the bike sideways, and all we heard was tweet, 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 as this thing shot into the bush, into the night. And the lion did exactly the same thing, just turned his course and was basically going to intersect Jock on the bicycle. So at this point, I said, no, we're going to have to make a plan. So I sort of raced the vehicle forward whilst the lion was in the thick bush. And then after about 30 seconds, we heard nothing. And then we heard this little bicycle being turned around and tweet, 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 back onto the road. And as he came back onto this road, the lion came again out to basically intercept him. And Jock eventually decided, no, this was not a good idea. So he turned the bicycle around to race away, and we just saw him disappearing into the night, tweet, 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 down the road. So at this point, I then just forced the lion off the road and raced after Jock. And the closer I got to him, the faster he rode, because he thought the thing coming behind him was a lion, not a vehicle. And it took us probably the better part of a kilometer to actually catch up with him and then grab him and put him onto the vehicle where he was safe. And the next morning, when he was finishing his duty, my tracker, this Jobby character, had gone and picked up the bicycle and then rode up and down in front of Jock, in front of all the guests, going tweet, 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 tweet. So that was Jacques and the Bicycle. The other quite fun one.